changing out the rear shocks and springs on this Pontiac G8 GT. Putting in some Chevy Caprice PPV police car shocks, as they are a little stiffer and very similar to the GXP wheels. And so already done the front. The front is complete, and so already did the driver's side, kind of get a feel for the best way to do it. And so this is going to be the way that I feel is probably the easiest, best way to replace the rear shocks and springs in this Pontiac G8. Would also work in the base and the GXP, and also in the Chevy Caprice PPV cop cars. While I'm replacing the rear shocks and springs, I'm also replacing the rear stabilizer link, or sway bar end links as they're more commonly called. So this has got to come out, and that little boy right there, we're going to take him out too and replace him with a new one. First thing we had to do is obviously remove the tire. Without removing the tire, you can't do nothing. So there you go, it's off. I will run a lug nut in right there all the way to hold that rotor still. We will remove this caliper just to make it easier to get the shocks and the spring out. So that's just a little bit in the way, so we're going to take that out, and we're going to lay it over here to the side, over here on this side, so that it is not in the way. And then we will remove the sway bar end link. Then we will unbolt the lower control arm right here at the bottom of the shock, and then also right here at the bottom of the rear hub assembly. We want to unbolt that one as well. So that's what we're going to do. See you in a minute. So after a few short minutes, here we are. Caliper is moved up out of the way. We have removed these bolts for the lower control arm, and removed the sway bar end link. So that is gone now. And now the next thing is we will need to go ahead and compress this spring. This is probably the worst part of this whole job. Just got to get these spring compressors in here and put the squeeze on it, make it a little bit smaller so that we can get it out. That'll be the next thing we got to do. A little bit has happened since last I talked to you. So we put the squeeze on the springs, and that's just to help us to get it out. You really don't need to do this when you're putting it back in. That's if you're using the lowering springs. If you're going back with stock, you know, your stock springs, you're going to want to compress them going back in if you're replacing just a shock. So compressed it, and then with your shoe or your foot, you're going to push down on that control arm so that you can get some leverage on it and push it down and pull that down and out. And so now that we got it out, now we can just give it a little wiggle, and then there it is. There is the shock and spring assembly. So I don't guess they call it a shock, even though it kind of resembles a strut the way it's made, but it's a shock. So yeah, like I said, with these spring compressors, this is the worst part, and I didn't even see this, but see, it's a good thing about using a double claw compressor, that, you know, one of them did grab it, but the other one did not, and it still did the job. These can be dangerous. I've heard of people getting hurt really bad on those if they broke. So you have to be careful with them. Get a good one. This one come from AutoZone or Advance, one of those places. And it's been a good one, but it's just about done all it's going to do. I'm going to have to retire it probably after this set. But so, yep. Now we're going to work on getting this top part, because our new shock and springs does not come with this. I don't even know what GM calls this, whatever Pontiac or Chevrolet calls this thing, but it's the mount that mounts to the body of the car up in there. So this upper part here, we're going to be replacing that. We're going to be keeping the bellow that's on the inside. And so next thing we're going to do, so very carefully use your legs to hold your spring assembly, and hold this with 18, and this is an Allen. I'm not sure what size it is, probably a 4 or 5 millimeter, and give it the old twist too, unscrew it, and take this off. Yeah, my hands are dirty, this car is dirty, but not rusty, thankfully. And then this goes back in the same order it comes off. So this comes off, set it down, and this whole thing right here just lifts up. Yeah, it's dirty. And this comes off, this little washer or spacer, it comes off. Like I said, everything goes back on the way it came off. And there's your bellow, I guess that's what it's called. It's just a spring shock cover, I mean. It goes there, and I don't have one of these, so we're going to be reusing this little bump stop. That's going to go back on a new one. And yeah, that's it. I don't really need nothing else off of this, but this is the old shock, what it looks like. So, there you go. Get her done. So I got the new spring and the new shock put together. Everything is ready to go back in the car. They were nice enough to include a new nut with this shock. The other shock didn't come with a new nut. Doesn't matter. One thing I did not pay too much is now I've got to set this bottom down inside the control arm right there. And then once I got the bottom set down inside the control arm, I can hold it down with my boot again, push it down, and then kind of get it to go up into that hole. But that's where its home is, and that's where it's got to go. So we got the spring and the shock assembly back in the car, sort of. The thing I didn't pay much attention to when I was putting it all together was making sure that the bottom part of the spring, the shock, was aligned up with this top part. So it's a little crooked. It's not a big deal. You just need to put a bolt in that and go ahead and tighten it down, and then we'll be able to put a little twist on this to get it to where it needs to be. So not a big deal. We'll go ahead and do that real quick as soon as we get a couple bolts in that and get her tightened down. Alright, this is a very important step. You know, we got that bolted down, put the twist on that, got that kind of well lined up like it's supposed to. Now we're trying to get this lower control arm back where it goes. So it's kind of difficult to hold it up, put a bolt in. If you had a small floor jack, then you could do it a whole lot easier. But once you get this side end of this bolt, this control arm is just sheet metal. It actually will twist, and you'll have a little bit of trouble trying to get that bolt right there. Where you at? Right there. That bolt right there. Hard to see through the hole. And once you get it kind of in there just a little bit, you're going to want to go ahead and stick the nut on it, put a couple threads on it. Because if you try to drive that bolt all the way in, if you try to drive that bolt like right there all the way in before you put the nut on it, you will probably not be able to get that nut on it, because it is all the way to the back of this other control arm, swing arm, not sure what it's called, linkage arm. You'll be not able to put the nut on there. It'll be, the bolt's almost too long, but it's the bolt that was in there to begin with. So yeah, something very much pay attention to. If you don't, you'll be pulling that bolt back out and doing it over again, scratching your head wondering why the nut won't go on there. But yep, make sure you pay attention to that. Then I've already got this one tightened up. I'll tighten up the rest of the way, and I'll start putting in these 4 bolts that go right here. They're 15s. The ones on this side I can get with an extension on an impact. The ones on this side, it's too tight, so I have to use a ratchet wrench. And let me tell you, they're not very expensive, but they're worth their weight in gold. This is a cobalt one and works really well. Need to get you some. we are done. Got the wheel back on. Everything is good and tight. Yep, it's in there. So glad too. I'll do another video down the road and see how what I think of the old car with the new suspension. Let's see. Can't wait to get it back down and get in alignment and take it out for a spin. Thank you for watching. If this video is informative, helped you in any way, that's awesome. That's a blessing. Appreciate you watching.